In business, as in life, your reputation isn't built on what you say, but on what you do, especially when you think no one is watching. My words echo through the grand ballroom as I accept the Sales Executive of the Year award. The crystal trophy catches the light, momentarily blinding me as I scan the audience of industry peers. 6 months ago, I was clearing out my desk after being unceremoniously fired by a man who thought I could be disposed of without consequences. Now I stand here, Elizabeth Morgan, 52 years old, mother of two, daughter of one, vindicated not by revenge, but by success. I spot Richard Hayes in the crowd, his forced smile failing to mask the resentment in his eyes. Beside him sits William Foster, Lumina Technologies CEO, whispering urgently to a board member. Their company has lost three major clients since my departure, including the $2.5 million Reynolds contract that I secured for my new employer. As I finish my speech about ethical business practices and relationship building, I make no mention of Lumina or the circumstances of my departure. I don't need to. Everyone in this room knows my story. The firing 6 months earlier, we're reorganizing the territory, Richard explained, not meeting my eyes. Your position is being eliminated. I sat across from him in his meticulously appointed office, staring at the termination letter he'd slid across his desk. The wall behind him displayed framed business magazines featuring Lumina Technologies' recent acquisition. Richard Hayes, 45, had arrived 3 months ago alongside CEO William Foster, both men bringing their aggressive management style from their previous company. The ink on the $2 million Reynolds contract I just secured isn't even dry yet, I said evenly, though my heart was pounding. 25 years at this company, the last 8 as sales director, and this was how it ended. I understand this is difficult, Richard replied, glancing at his watch. It was 4:30 p.m. on a Friday. But these decisions are necessary for the company's future direction. My father's voice echoed in my head. In business, loyalty goes both ways, Lizzie. Dad had worked 30 years at the same manufacturing plant, rising from the assembly line to operations manager. A world that no longer existed. Thank you for the opportunity, I said, my voice betraying none of the storm brewing inside me. As I packed my desk, I noticed younger colleagues averting their eyes. Only Sarah from accounting dared approach. Elizabeth, this isn't right, she whispered. Everyone knows you're the backbone of this sales team. I smiled tightly. It's just business, right? But it wasn't just business. The Reynolds contract represented more than another sale. It was the culmination of 20 years of relationship building with James Reynolds himself. We'd started our careers around the same time, sharing stories of our children growing up, supporting each other through my divorce and his wife's cancer treatment. That commission would have paid for my mother's specialized memory care and my daughter's final year of college. Richard knew all this. We'd discussed it over lunch just 3 weeks ago when he'd congratulated me on nearly closing the deal, saying I was vital to Lumina's future. In the elevator, I checked my phone to find a text from James. Dinner still on for Wednesday to celebrate the partnership? A small smile formed on my lips. Richard Hayes understood spreadsheets and quarterly profits, but he failed to grasp what truly made business work. Relationships built on trust and mutual respect over decades, not months. Flashback. My early days. I was 27 when I joined the company, then called Nexoptic Solutions, before all the mergers and rebranding. My daughter Emma was just 3, my son Michael barely 1. My divorce was still fresh, the wounds raw. I needed this job desperately. You don't have enough experience, the hiring manager had told me. What I lack in experience, I make up for in determination, I'd replied. I have 2 children to support. Something in those words, or perhaps the unwavering look in my eyes, convinced him to take a chance. I remember calling my father that night. Dad, I got the job. That's my girl, he'd said, pride warming his voice. Remember, Lizzie, business is really about people. Numbers matter, but people matter more. Those words became my professional compass. While colleagues chased one-time sales, I built relationships. When the company faced bankruptcy during the 2008 recession, those relationships saved us. Clients stayed loyal because they were loyal to me, not to a corporate entity. Mother's Care Facility, evening after firing. There's my corporate warrior, Mom beamed as I entered her room at Lakeside Memory Care. At 78, the early stages of Alzheimer's had begun to cloud her once sharp mind, but her smile still carried the warmth that had anchored our family through Dad's early death and the financial struggles that followed. "How's work, dear? Still showing those young men how it's done?" I swallowed hard. "Everything's fine, Mom. How are you feeling today?" "Better than yesterday, worse than tomorrow," she quipped, her standard response. I couldn't tell her. Not when her continued stay at this facility, the only one that offered the experimental treatment showing promising results, depended on my financial stability. The severance would cover 3 months of expenses, but without that commission. "You look tired," Elizabeth, Mom said, suddenly lucid. "Your father always said you carried the weight of the world on your shoulders, just like him." I squeezed her hand. "I'm fine, Mom. Just a long week. Home." That evening, "Mom, is everything okay?" Emma asked as soon as I walked through the door. At 19, my daughter was perceptive beyond her years, currently home from college for spring break. Michael looked up from his laptop at the dining table. My 17-year-old son had his father's analytical mind but my determination. "You're home early," he observed. "And you've been crying." I hadn't realized the tears had escaped during the drive home. "I lost my job today," I admitted, sinking onto the couch. Emma sat beside me immediately, her arm around my shoulders. "Those idiots. After everything you've done for them?" "It's the new management," I explained. "They're cutting costs by eliminating experienced staff." "You mean older staff?" Emma said bluntly. "That's age discrimination." Michael closed his laptop. "What about Grandma's care facility? And next semester's tuition?" The weight of their concern pressed upon me. I'd never allowed my children to feel financial instability, not since the divorce 12 years ago when their father decided his new girlfriend was more important than child support payments. "We'll be fine," I assured them, more confidently than I felt. "I've saved for emergencies, and I have options." I didn't mention that my primary option involved leveraging a 20-year friendship in a way that made me profoundly uncomfortable. Flashback: Richard's arrival 3 months ago. William Foster had been introduced as our new CEO, bringing Richard Hayes as his right-hand man. "We're going to streamline operations," Foster had announced in his first company meeting. "Maximize shareholder value. Corporate speak for cutting corners and people." I'd noticed the warning signs: the cancellation of the annual client retreat, the revised commission structure that somehow always calculated to less than before, the subtle pressure to hand over client relationships to the account management team, recent graduates who could be paid half as much. David Chen, my deputy director, had voiced his concerns over lunch. "They're pushing out the veterans, Elizabeth. It happened at their last company too." "It won't happen to me," I'd said confidently. "Not with my numbers, not with the Reynolds deal so close." How naive I'd been. The call. That night, I sat in my home office, staring at James Reynolds' contact on my phone. Our weekly dinner had become a tradition during the negotiation process. He valued authenticity. It was what had drawn Reynolds Enterprises to Lumina in the first place, or more accurately, to me. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the call button. Using this relationship felt uncomfortable. But I thought of my mother's vulnerable smile, my daughter's tuition bill, my son's college applications. The line rang twice before James' familiar voice answered. "Elizabeth, I was just thinking about you. Still on for Wednesday?" "Absolutely," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "But James, there's something we need to discuss." Restaurant, Wednesday evening. La Contra had been our negotiation headquarters for months. The upscale restaurant in downtown Plano held memories of countless discussions, from initial skepticism to eventual partnership. I'd arrived early, selected our usual corner table, and ordered a bottle of James' favorite Barolo. When he arrived, his smile faltered as he read my expression. "Something's wrong," he said, settling into his chair. I took a deep breath and laid out the facts. No emotional embellishments, no pleas for sympathy, just the truth. I'd been terminated 2 weeks before my commission would have paid out on the deal I'd architected from initial contact to signed contract. James' face darkened. "That's contemptible." "It's just business," I repeated, the phrase that had become my bitter mantra. No. James set down his wine glass with deliberate care. Business is about relationships and integrity. Without those, it's just theft wearing a suit. Coming from the CEO of a $500 million technology company, the words carried weight. He studied me for a moment. What are your plans? Margaret Wilson at Meridian Innovations has been trying to recruit me for years, I said, referring to one of Lumina's main competitors. She called within hours of hearing about my termination. James nodded slowly, his analytical mind working through the implications. And our contract with Lumina has a 14-day rescission clause, I added. We reviewed it together, if you recall. Either party can withdraw without penalty within 2 weeks. I wasn't asking him to cancel. I would never explicitly ask that of him. The decision had to be his, based on his own business judgment. James stared at me for a long moment, then pulled out his phone. Robert, he said to his legal counsel, pull the Lumina contract. I want to invoke the rescission clause first thing tomorrow. He paused, listening. Yes, I'm certain. And clear my morning schedule for a call with their leadership. After hanging up, he looked at me. This isn't just about your commission, Elizabeth. During our negotiations, you promised that you personally would oversee the implementation. That was a material factor in our decision. I nodded, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. Meridian's product line is actually better suited for your needs, I said truthfully. The optical components have a longer warranty, and their custom design team is more experienced with your specific applications. When can you start there? Monday. Margaret is eager to have me on board. Good. James raised his glass. Then I look forward to hearing Meridian's proposal next week. As we finished dinner discussing his grandchildren and my mother's health, I felt no triumph, no vindictive pleasure, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that in a world where loyalty was increasingly rare, integrity still mattered to some. Flashback. Meeting Margaret. I'd first met Margaret Wilson at an industry conference 12 years ago. At 58, she was a rarity in our male-dominated field, a female CEO who had built Meridian from the ground up. We need more women like you in leadership positions, she told me after hearing my presentation on long-term client relationship strategies. When you're ready for a change, call me. Over the years, she'd reached out periodically. I'd always declined, loyal to the company that had given me my start. You're undervalued there, she'd said during our last conversation 6 months ago. At Meridian, we recognize that experience isn't a liability, it's our greatest asset. I dismissed her words then. Now they resonated with painful clarity. The aftermath. Next morning, my phone began ringing at 7 a.m. Richard. I sent it to voicemail. He called again and again. By the fourth call, I decided to answer. Elizabeth? He sounded breathless, panicked. We need to talk about what? Richard, my position was eliminated, remember? I kept my voice pleasant, as if discussing the weather. Reynolds just canceled their contract. James Reynolds personally called William and pulled out of the deal. His voice tightened. Did you have anything to do with this? How could I? I don't work for Lumina anymore. Listen. His tone shifted to conciliatory. There's been a misunderstanding. We want to bring you back. Same position, better compensation package. The territory reorganization has been postponed. I almost laughed at the transparency of it. That's a generous offer, Richard, but I've already accepted a position with Meridian Innovations. I start Monday. The silence on the other end was deafening. Meridian? You can't do that. Your non-compete doesn't apply when I've been terminated without cause, I finished for him. Page 4, paragraph 3 of my employment contract. I reviewed it with my attorney yesterday. Another long pause. What did you tell Reynolds? The truth. That I was terminated shortly after securing his business. Damn it, Elizabeth. The mask of professionalism slipped. Do you have any idea what you've done? The board is going ballistic. This was a cornerstone deal for the quarter. It sounds stressful, I said, feeling a strange sense of calm. I should let you go so you can handle that situation. Best of luck, Richard. As I ended the call, I received a text from Sarah. Office is chaos. William called emergency meeting. Richard looks like he's about to explode. I didn't respond. Instead, I drove to Meridian's headquarters for my first meeting with their executive team. New beginnings. Meridian headquarters. Margaret Wilson greeted me with a firm handshake. At 58, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had faced industry skepticism and emerged victorious. "Welcome to the team, Elizabeth," she said. "We're thrilled to have you." "Thank you for the opportunity," I replied, the words carrying more sincerity than when I'd said them to Richard. Margaret led me to a conference room where the executive team waited. "Elizabeth is joining us from Lumina," she announced, "and she's already creating waves." Reynolds Enterprises canceled their contract with Lumina this morning. The executives exchanged glances. "We have a narrow window of opportunity here," Margaret continued. "Elizabeth has a relationship with Reynolds' CO. We need to move quickly to present our solution before their procurement team looks at other options." I cleared my throat. "I've tentatively scheduled a meeting with James next Wednesday. He's expecting our proposal." Margaret's smile widened. "Perfect. Let's make sure it's irresistible." The showdown. Reynolds Enterprises. Wednesday arrived with unexpected tension. Despite my confidence in Meridian's superior offering, years in sales had taught me that nothing was certain until contracts were signed. As our team prepared to leave for the meeting with Reynolds, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. "It's David, using Sarah's phone. Urgent. Richard is meeting with James right now, offering 30% discount plus free implementation." My stomach dropped. I showed the message to Margaret. "Can we head over now?" I asked. "I think we may need to get ahead of this." Margaret nodded grimly, and we left immediately. Upon arriving at Reynolds Enterprises, the receptionist informed us that James was in a meeting but had left instructions to send us to conference room B when we arrived. Walking through the familiar hallways felt surreal, like returning to a place I'd only dreamed about. When we entered the conference room, I stopped short. Sitting at the table was not only James, but Richard, looking smug, and William Foster, who seemed surprised by our entrance. "Elizabeth." James stood, smiling warmly. Perfect timing. These gentlemen from Lumina were just explaining why I should reconsider my cancellation. Richard's expression shifted from confidence to discomfort as I introduced Margaret and the Meridian team. "We were under the impression we had an exclusive meeting," William said, his tone clipped. "I invited both parties," James replied evenly. "I believe in making informed decisions." What followed was the most unusual presentation of my career. Richard outlined Lumina's desperate concessions: price cuts, extended warranties, free training. I presented Meridian's thoughtful, customized solution. Throughout it all, James watched, asking occasional questions but giving no indication of his preference. When both presentations concluded, James thanked everyone. "This has been enlightening. I'll need to confer with my team before making a decision." Outside the building, Richard cornered me in the parking lot. "You won't get away with this," he hissed. "You have no idea what you're up against." "I'm up against a man who fired me to avoid paying my commission," I replied calmly. "I think I understand the situation perfectly." His face reddened. "It wasn't personal. It was a business decision. And this is my business decision." I gestured toward the Reynolds building. "May the best solution win." Flashback. My father's lesson. When I was 16, my father lost his job after 20 years at the manufacturing plant. New management had decided to trim the fat. I found him sitting at the kitchen table, staring at his termination letter. "It's not fair," I'd said, angry tears in my eyes. "Life rarely is, Lizzie," he'd replied, putting his arm around my shoulders. But how we respond to unfairness defines who we are. 2 weeks later, he was hired by a competitor with a promotion. Within a year, 3 of his former colleagues had joined him. His old company struggled and eventually closed. "I didn't set out for revenge," he told me. "I simply did my job well, and the rest took care of itself." Victory and vindication. 2 days later, 2 agonizing days passed before my phone rang with James' number. "We've made our decision," he said without preamble. "Can you come to my office at 4 p.m.? The drive to Reynolds felt like traversing a minefield. Had Richard's desperation tactics worked? Had the substantial price cut swayed James' procurement team? When I arrived, I was escorted directly to James' office. To my surprise, no one from Lumina was present, just James and his engineering team. Elizabeth, he greeted me. I want you to explain to our team exactly how Meridian's optical sensors will integrate with our existing systems. For the next hour, I detailed the implementation process, answering technical questions from Reynolds engineers. When we finished, James stood and extended his hand. We'll go with Meridian. The contract is being drawn up as we speak. Relief washed over me, followed quickly by professional composure. You won't regret it. The product truly is superior. I know, he said, but equally important is working with people of integrity. Return to awards ceremony present day. The applause brings me back to the present moment as I conclude my acceptance speech. I make no mention of Richard Hayes or Lumina Technologies. I don't need to. The results speak for themselves. As I step down from the podium, industry colleagues approach me, some to offer congratulations, others seeking advice, and a few quietly inquiring about opportunities at Meridian. Wellington Corporation had indeed moved their business to us, followed by two other major Lumina clients. Our company's market share had grown 15%, while Lumina's had declined by almost 20%. James finds me at the reception afterward. Congratulations, he says, clinking his glass against mine. Well deserved. Thank you for taking a chance on Meridian, I reply. How's the implementation going? Ahead of schedule and under budget, he says. Your team is exceptional. They are, I agree. And so is yours. We chat briefly about future projects before he is called away by another associate. As I watch him leave, Margaret approaches. Have you seen this? She asks, showing me her tablet. The headline reads, Lumina Technologies announces layoffs amid continuing market struggles. The article mentions that William Foster has stepped down as CEO, replaced by the board chairman as interim leadership. I feel no joy at the news, only a sense of inevitability. Epilogue. Mother's Care Facility. The autumn wind scatters leaves across the sidewalk as I approach the care facility where my mother lives. Thanks to my improved financial situation, she has a private room with daily specialized therapy for her condition. There's my girl, she beams as I enter, setting aside the book she'd been reading. How's the new treatment working? I ask, taking the chair beside her bed. The doctor says I'm responding better than expected, she replies. I might be able to move back to my apartment by Christmas. That's wonderful, Mom. And how's my corporate warrior doing? Still conquering the business world? I smile, updating her on recent developments. I've been promoted to Vice President of Strategic Accounts at Meridian, with a team of 12 sales executives reporting to me. The Reynolds implementation has been so successful that they've expanded the contract to include 2 additional divisions. You know what your father would say about all this, she says, a wistful look crossing her face. Success is best when it's earned honestly, I quote. She nods. He would be so proud of you, Elizabeth, not just for your achievements, but for how you've achieved them. On the drive home, I reflect on the past 6 months. I hadn't sought revenge when Richard betrayed me. I'd simply ensured that consequences found him through his own actions. I hadn't torn down Lumina. They'd undermined themselves by prioritizing short-term gains over sustainable relationships. My phone buzzes with a text from my daughter. Mom, just got my midterm grades. All is. Celebration dinner this weekend? Absolutely, I reply. I'm so proud of you. My father's words about loyalty going both ways echo in my mind. While the corporate world had changed since his time, some principles remained eternal: integrity, relationships, and the understanding that how you treated people always came back to you in the end. Richard had taught me a valuable lesson, though not the one he intended. In business, as in life, your reputation isn't built on what you say, but on what you do, especially when you think no one is watching.